Welcome back, everybody. This is episode 9 of The Final How, and I'm Zach Feigert.
Bill Sycophus.
And this week, we got Mr. Brandon Frank.
How's it going, guys?
How you doing?
Howdy, bud.
Doing good. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming in. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit how you got started in coyote hunting.
I'd say probably when I first started really getting serious about it was probably back when I was in high school. My sister dated a guy, and we were both, he was more big into deer hunting than I was, but I was trying to get big into deer hunting, and my family owns some ground, and we've got just a small little woods in the corner of it, and I'll be honest, it just doesn't hold deer, and I struggled to really see a whole lot, and kind of got burnt out on just sitting in a tree stand and not seeing a whole lot. And we knew we had coyotes because we'd hear them all the time, and he kind of just brought up, like, well, I got this red light, you can get one too for like $150. Why don't we start coyote hunting? And
we've all been there.
Yeah. And I don't think the stuff we're using today was really out. That was 10 years ago. I don't think it was really out back then, but so that's kind of what we started doing. And it was like for a year. I don't remember how long my sister dated that guy, but there for a year. All winter long, every weekend, that's kind of what we did, is we'd go out and try to call coyotes. And we killed not very many, but we killed 2 or 3, I think, doing it that way. And then I went to college and didn't have the time for it and wasn't home as much. And, life happened, and still had all this stuff, and kind of started getting back into it probably a year or 2 ago, because I guess I still stuck it out with the red light for a little while until one of my buddies showed up one time with a thermal scope, and I'm like, holy cow, this is awesome. And, you get on Facebook and you start reading about how everybody talks about how the coyotes can see the shadows from the red lights, and how you just don't even realize how many coyotes you're not seeing because you're so limited. And I'm kind of naturally a pretty tight person with my money, and I was not really wanting to drop however much on a thermal, and I got a wife and 2 kids, and it's like, man, do I really want to spend that much money on it? And so I tried to go the cheap route, and I bought I had a night vision scope, and I bought probably the best the best infrared light, one of the best ones you can buy for it. I ran a Sniper Hog light with it, and that light was great. Had a really cheap thermal monocular, and thought that would be good enough. And that was kind of the gear that I was running when I met you. Thought that was going to be good enough, and this year I finally just bit the bullet and bought a lot better stuff.
Explain kind of with your night vision, what were some of the problems you were having that you were noticing? If
you're in a cut bean field, night vision was great. You could see crystal clear and you could see far. But with my night vision, if you call in multiple dogs and you shoot at one and you try to swivel on the next one, it was, that all happened so fast. You're trying, the whole picture's gray. You're trying to find that next one, and by the time you find it, it's probably 200, 300 yards away. But the other thing is, topography and any kind of anything that would stand up, if you're if there's a fence row out there that you're looking at, or corn stalks, it would it would make the light bleed out almost to where you just couldn't quite see what you were looking at. For instance, I had made a stand pretty close to home last year, and I was hunting a crosswind and was figuring something was going to come right out in front of me and run this ditch that ran along the field and just kind of come up and try to get my wind. And that was after we had hunted, together last year. same spot that one of the places we hunted at. And so I was trying to play the wind, and I just checked behind me, and I was like, okay, I got two, I could, with that thermal, it was just a 256 sensor, bare bones kind of thing. I could see the heat coming. Didn't really know what it was, but, they were kind of coming along the far side of that ditch that's got grass and everything grown up, and that field was corn then. And so I swiveled the gun around to get on them, and it's like I could see eyes in the field as they went to my downwind, but then they got my wind, and I have no clue where they went, because by the time I switched back to my binocular to try to see them, because if they weren't looking at me, I really struggled to see them. It was like, I don't know where they went, but they got my wind, so I'm busted and might as well pack out. But like rolling ground too, like, you always take the high spot, but if you got like a little bit of a roll that comes up and then it dips back down and then back up, it's like that light would just hit that first hill, and then anything that was behind it, it's like you either got to adjust your gun so you're not hitting, that light beam is not hitting any of that hill, or or it just kind of made everything behind it bleed out.
So, kind of to back up a little bit, from when you were calling with red lights and you were just starting, and then even kind of more present a year or so ago, what were your techniques going into coyote? Like, when you were making stands back then, what were you looking for and what were you thinking?
I'll be 100% honest with you, there wasn't a whole lot of thought process there. It was just like, well, we're just going to go out, set the collar out, and let's go. Like, I remember one time after I was with one of my buddies, and I used to just run like a little bipod on the front of my gun, and I'd just sit on the ground. And that was when my buddy showed up, and he had his thermal, and he had a tripod, and I'm like, what the heck is that? Didn't even realize that tripods were a thing yet then. And, we walked out in the field behind my parents' house, and it's like, we started calling, and he's like, hey, there's one out there. And I'm like, well, I can't see this at all. And then it just kind of faded off into a ditch, and I'm like, I remember thinking at that point, I'm like, our wind is blowing right at that. And that was kind of like the first aha moment. It's like,
so you never really considered wind?
Never really considered the wind.
Anything.
No.
It was just maybe covers, what you were thinking, or not even really thinking that?
Not even really that. I mean, when we had called, years and years ago, with back then, we just kind of had thought, well, we're sitting on the ground. I mean, that year that we hunted, it must have been beans, because I remember going out the next year, and it was corn stalks. We try to sit, my bipod's 2 feet tall. You try to sit in corn stalks with a red light. It's like, I can't see anything. Kind of similar situation to the night vision. It's like It just catches all that light. You don't have the distance. But no, hadn't really thought about it, I guess. We're just kind of out there educating coyotes more or less. But, yeah.
You don't really think of it as that, though, when, you're just surviving with what you got, I guess not surviving, but dealing with what you got. So there's, anybody that's got this kind of equipment, we're not discouraging you by any means, but it is a good testimony that he's saying he's progressed, just like kind of we all did. Like, I remember the days that I didn't have anything. I just, if there wasn't snow on the ground and the light of the moon, I wasn't hunting. So every month, it was just, I couldn't wait for the light of the moon, and hopefully it snowed. And so, with what you were saying though, you've progressed. I mean, I still want to take any of it back, because this is, I see you going in a good direction.
And I would never say that night vision is for nobody.
Yeah.
But for where we are in north central Indiana, we hunt a lot of big open ag fields. There's a lot of stands that I make where, there's a block of timber there, but in all reality, a lot of, in a handful of the directions that I'm looking, it's I can see 1,000, 1,500 yards. And to just be able to see that there's something out there, because I can never see that far. I mean, you can kind of see that far with the night vision. You're never going to see that far with the red light, but to just know there's something out there.
So when you went to the night vision and then your thermal monocular you had, you were more or less trying to identify possibly something with the monocular and counting on your IR scope to identify and kill the coyote.
Exactly, yeah.
Well,
Because to me, like the investment from the infrared to full good thermal gear, I mean, I had a quarter of what I have in my thermal stuff, in my IR stuff, and my that other monocular. So I was like, you're kind of like right there at that fine line of like, okay, let's figure out like how serious am I going to be about this, like before I go spend too much money on this, like.
And I got
how much do I really like it?
Right. Yeah, I got to give you a lot of credit for sticking it out with it and still, pounding the dirt with it and not really getting any kind of results and having, I guess, I don't know if you call them mishaps or you just, when I went with you this year, the coyotes I was seeing, you weren't even knowing they were there.
No, that was, I mean, that time we went in October, I mean, that the next day I bought the setup I'm running now, because it was like, on that one stand, I'm like, hey, there's a coyote right there, and you're like, actually, there's like 5, and I'm like,
actually, there's 5.
Okay, and it was like, then that one came in there, and I'm screwing around with my scope, trying to get my light setting adjusted right, and I think my light was kind of like pointed off to the side, and I'm like, crap, I don't see it, and then it's like, by the time I had it ready to go, that coyote had peeled off around the woods, which ended up circling around us, and you ended up shooting it later on. But that was just like the aha moment for me. It's just like, okay, I'm only going to go so far with what I have.
Right.
I probably could have made the scope work. The scope worked fine, but at a minimum, I probably would have had to upgrade the monocular. And I'm just like, if I'm going to do this, I'm just going to do it all.
Yep. It's an expensive sport, just like anything else, especially if you're trying to improve with the times. We went through it. I mean,
it's amazing just being able to see, okay, there's coyotes out there. And then when you're running the call, knowing to be able to read their body language, see that, oh man, this is turning them, or man, they don't give a care in the world what I'm playing. Like, you might be able to sit there and Blair Rabbit for 10 minutes. Well, with your old setup, when they were out there at 800 yards, you didn't even know they were there.
So that's like the perfect example, because I was hunting, I was on a stand about a month ago, and like we walk out there and it's like, okay, there's some heat way out there, and like my scope now has a rangefinder built into it, and I'm like, okay, that is like right on the edge of my limit. It was like 960 yards away, and I'm like, at that point, it was like, is that a deer or is that a coyote? I'm not sure yet. It was a fairly humid night, but I knew it was there, so it's like, okay, thinking back now to how I would have played my normal call sequence, I'm not seeing anything. I'm playing Prey Distress. I'll do some vocals, non-aggressive vocals, and then as I progress through the stand, I'm going to go maybe slightly more aggressive vocals, and then we're going to switch to Pup Distress. And it's like, if I would have just played my normal sequence, and because I didn't know they were out there, I probably would have never called that quad in. But because I knew they were out there, I'm like, okay, they're there. I'm not going to get too aggressive and rip off solo howl, switch to some Rabbit Distress. And I mean, it took them like 8 minutes, but they slowly worked their way in. And it's like, I would have already been to the aggressive stuff, and would they have still come in? Or, probably with it being a quad, but if that was a solo out there, would it have still come in? If I started getting aggressive too soon, we'll never know, but maybe not.
Right. But being able to see them, read them, that helped out a lot.
Well, and just being able to actually like read body language now is big, because you're like, okay, especially like on that night, it's like that was a night where it was fairly humid out and there was no wind, and it was overcast, but we had, like a half moon. So it was, even though it was overcast, the moon was up and it was still fairly bright. It's like those coyotes checked up at like 180, 200 yards, and you could just tell on that lead coyote something. I don't know. You guys talk about thermals a lot, and I kind of believe in what you're talking about. I don't know.
Your scent thermals.
Our scent
what you're
thermals,
talking
yeah.
about.
I don't know if, there was no wind. I don't know if our thermals were just kind of pushing out around us or if they saw us, but you could just see that lead dog start to get skittish and start to take off. And, I was with my brother-in-law on that stand, and it's like, all right, here we go, 1, 2, 3, and, it's time to go where they're going to move. So.
And then you also, too, upgraded guns.
Yeah.
From the old AR to...
Yeah, so, the embarrassing thing is, like I've joked around with you guys, I'm doing a pretty good job of educating some local coyotes. That AR, it was not an expensive AR. I question, how accurate it really is. 150 yards seemed to be the kiss of death for that thing. I'd check it, and I'm still on at 50 yards. Tried to shoot at 200 yards, and I've got a pretty big group, and it's like, well, there's probably my problem.
223?
223, yeah.
Yeah. I dealt with the same stuff.
And it's just like, 16-inch barrel. It's not an expensive gun. It's got a mil-spec trigger. And that was the other thing. Like when I started, you guys were talking about on a previous podcast, slowing your videos down. I'm slowing all these videos down, whether it's on my night vision scope or whether it's on my thermal. And it's like, you can just watch right when I'm squeezing that trigger, the end of my gun is going down just a hair. And I have missed a lot of them just a little bit low. And it's like between, I think, marginal accuracy on the gun and that stiff trigger, I'm like, okay, like this gun, I can see him now, but I don't have enough gun now, is what I was telling myself anyway. So yeah, I copied you guys and I upgraded to a Bolt 6.5. And the funny thing is, I joke around, 150 yards was a kiss of death for that AR. I never hit anything past that. My first kill with my Bolt 6.5, very lucky shot, but it was 340 yards.
Yep.
That coyote, like we had just set up, started ripping off rabbit distress. It was a stand where I'd hunted it a month before. I don't know if it was the same coyote, but I'd called a coyote in. This is embarrassing. I just kind of got the jitters and whiffed on it, but called it in to like 75 yards, missed it. And so then same stand, set up the same way. And that coyote, like I said, I don't know if it was the same one, but it took off running hard to our downwind. And I remember telling Alex, I'm like, this thing's going to our downwind, be ready to shoot. And it hit our wind and never came any closer, hit our wind, and it stopped for a split second and then started running back towards the woods that was further out. And I'm like, here we go, 3, 2, 1, and ripped the shot off and got fortunate and hit it. But I'm like, okay.
It's all right.
I'm like,
Hey, man.
this gun is better than the AR because I just hit one twice as far as what I
Right.
could with the AR.
And confidence goes a long ways.
Yeah.
And when you know you're accurate, you know you're on, you got the weapon. It's just a perfect recipe to make something happen.
Yeah.
Especially when you're trying to reach out there. Like, I know there's a lot of guys that use 223s and are very successful with them.
Mm-hmm.
But
I had a lot of success with them. I'm not saying I didn't, but it limited my shots. I found out that you don't need to rat tat tat tat. That's the whole the AR thing. Man, what if I call for you and I want to be able to shoot? Well,
But I think that's like, so I bought a suppressor this summer too, and to me, like, suppressed versus unsuppressed is a lot bigger difference than bolt versus AR, because it's amazing how many times you can shoot before they really take off.
Oh,
if
there's
you're
yes,
suppressed.
absolutely.
yeah,
on
that makes a huge deal. And
But
plus,
back then, when I had my AR, nobody was using suppressors.
Sure.
Right.
They just weren't. And like I said, I remember when I got my first tripod, and I was like, "What? I didn't know that." Yeah, so we've all been through this. So and it all goes.
And I wouldn't necessarily say you're educating them. I
just-
tell you that everybody's got to learn.
Yeah.
We do it too. I mean, it happens. That's just all part of the hunt.
Part of learning.
Right.
Hell, I did it the other night.
Good
What are you
gnats are
talking
getting you,
about?
ain't
Yeah. But it is what it is. It's just about moving on, forgetting about it. But back to the AR. I mean,
When you had
two-
success with yours, were you primarily day hunting or were you night hunting?
no, I was night hunting, but I had a thermal scope though.
Okay.
I had a thermal scope. Okay, so and it was more of the AR type. I guess that's what we call them. But I called a lot. I did a lot of. I hunted by myself, and I didn't hunt with nobody. So there was no, I got to make sure, Zach's, it didn't matter. I was by myself. So, I mean, I let me back up a minute. So before I did that, I shotgun. I didn't even use rifles. I only shotgunned coyotes. That's how I killed them all, with shotguns. Mm-hmm. That is no kidding. Shotguns. That's how close I would get them. Okay. So with the AR, I felt very comfortable that 100 yards and in, and that was no problem. I mean, on an average, I was shooting them at 60, 80 yards. I had runners, of course, but I wasn't doing coyotes, or I wasn't doing tournaments, so I didn't care. I knew I hit them; they were going to go off and die. I was trying, to eliminate the predators, for the deer, because the deer was kind of why I was doing it. But with the 223, you had to hit. I mean, I shot them with 17, 17s. If you hit them right, you're going to kill them. Don't get me wrong. But one thing we've learned the hard way, especially the further they are out, the 223 just ran out of ass. And then I switched to the 22-250. Zach and I's both been through that. I love the 22-250 round. I really do. But something's just, to be said about that 6.5 Creedmoor. I love it. It's usually it's down for the count.
Yeah, it hammers them.
Well, I had one. I had called a triple in this summer, right behind my dad's house, because the beans were still short, and I shot a coyote at like 70 yards, dropped it, swiveled onto the next one, and I think it was on the run. I would have been unsuppressed then, and it was moving quick, and I don't even remember if I shot at it or not. Swiveled back to go look at the one that I had dropped that I had watched go down. That coyote was gone. And it's just
We've been through that.
What
We've
the
had
heck?
that happen so much.
I'm like, and that's when it's just like, okay, when they go down, they start to do their death spin, or they go down and they start kicking. It's like at that point, you just put another round into them. And the last coyote I shot with my 223, like, it was that bobtail female.
Yeah.
And it destroyed that coyote. You would think 223 would be pretty fur friendly, but that one got destroyed. But, it's just, that was a perfect, it was a good shot placement and everything, but you just don't always get that at night, it seems like, depending on how they're coming in and what's going on. We had one, I was with my brother-in-law again, and we had shot one, got it down, and we flipped dump up to stress, and lo and behold, 3 minutes later, another one came in, and he shot it and dropped it, and I didn't even shoot at it again because it just went down, and then it hopped back up, and it took off running, and we, shot a few times at it running away, but it's just like, man, that stinks.
Right.
Could have had a double.
I mean, you've killed more coyotes now in the last month and a half.
Than I've killed in the rest of my entire life, yeah.
Right. Just by making those adjustments with your equipment.
Mm-hmm.
You made the decision, I'm serious about this. I want to go to the next level. And you did, and boom. It's like, it wasn't anything you were doing. It wasn't really your calling. You made all those adjustments with your calling, your setup, getting your wind, learned all of that. Still weren't seeing anything. You called me, you're like, man, you want to go out? So I go out with you. You called the first set. You called in the first double, the first stand we made. You were running the call.
Yeah.
and called them in. I'm like, dude, I really don't think your problem's anything besides you just can't see the damn things.
Well, and that one was like that stand we made there was like a wheat field that was all growed up with weeds. And I had told you going into that one, like, if we actually call anything here, you're going to have to shoot it, because even though we were up on that hill, it's like all I'm going to see is eyes, and everything else is going to get bled out. But yeah, there were two there.
So other than the equipment, do you feel like, though, I mean, I know how I feel with what, your story, but so the experience, the not giving up, the being persistent with this, I mean, the experience is a great thing too, isn't it? I mean, yes, the having the equipment is great, but you've stuck with it. You know what I mean? You didn't give up. You figured it out. And that's the hardest part about it, just figuring it out. Because not all equipment, like with what we're shooting, we're all very similar in what we're shooting, and that works for us. I mean, if we're in Texas or out in the big lands, some of them guys, I mean, they sit there and say they shoot 500 and 600 yards at these coyotes, and it's like, wow. I don't know what they're using for that, but these 6.5s, they work great for us around here. But like I said, minus the equipment, it just sounds like to me, though, you have, I mean, just stuck with it because you love to do it. It's a challenge, and because and the reason I'm saying this is because I've talked about this in a couple episodes, man. You're not gonna learn this overnight unless you're just with somebody that's already an ace, and is taking you under their wing and really showing you. It takes you got to experience it, because I can't sit here and tell you what it's like to go out there and do what we do. You can't. You
just got to experience it.
But it sounds like you've made the changes, and you're.
Well, and I'm a few years younger than you guys, and I'm from that.
Thanks for being nice.
I'm from the social media. I'm from the social media generation,
for me.
so like it's so easy to hop on Facebook, read, try to read as much as you can, try to sort through some good information on Facebook. I've watched, I don't know how many hours of YouTube videos this summer trying to figure it out. Listen to countless hours of podcasts, but like there's no replacement for going out, looking through a scope, and just making mistakes, because you can hear all the right things and know what you should do, but until you actually go out and make, either have success or make mistakes and be willing to learn from those mistakes. And I'm still learning. I'm not an expert by any means. But, from listening to you guys talk about things and, some of the other nuggets of information I've picked up from other sources, it's like, it sounds good when you're listening to it, but when you actually apply it to a real hunting situation, it's like, it just makes a lot more sense now. And I just messed up, and I will not do this again.
What was your biggest aha moment? Because I'm sure you've had one, and you're still very young and fresh into your, calling, coyote hunting career, I guess you'd say it.
Probably playing the wind. Like when we went out, the few times that we've been out, you're like, man, I'd give them some wind. Like, don't just stick the wind in your face. Give them some wind and try to make them feel as comfortable as they can. And then, once you kind of actually do that, one way or, unless you got just a dumb coyote that's trying to bomb in and come right for the call. Like, we called in one the other day, and it's like, okay, we walk out in the field, and it's like, hey, there's one right there behind, it was 200 yards behind a house, and it was to my right, and Alex was on my left, and I'm like, set the call like straight out in front of us, and we just started on light prey distress, and we had a crosswind blowing from my right to his left, and it's like that coyote's gonna like circle around us and try to get the wind on the call, so just set it like straight out in front of us, and that was like exactly what the coyote did. Like, we couldn't have drawn it up any better. The only thing we had to do was wait for it to get out from like directly behind a house that was on the next county road over, and it was like, this is how it should work.
Right. It's amazing how you pick up on those little things, and when you learn them, then when you get into situations like that, you don't. For me, I guess what I'm trying to get after is it helps me slow it down. Because if you do see them, or they're coming in, coyotes are working in, knowing those things, you're like, okay, the wind's hitting me here, the call's placed over there, that coyote's going to come in.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, you could about pick within about a 50-yard circle where you're going to shoot that coyote before it even gets there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good. That's real good information for somebody. That's why I was wanting to know what your kind of ha-ha moment was.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, they're predators. Like, I agree with you guys. I don't think they can see. I mean, I'm sure they can see better than we can at night, but I don't think they can see crazy distances. And it's like they're going to live and die by their nose. And that's probably the most, to me, that was probably the aha moment, is you just got to play their nose.
Figuring out the wind schemes. And there's times we're wrong. There's times they either come straight in or do something crazy. We've seen it all.
Right.
I mean, but 9 times out of 10, they are going to try to get around to see what they're
coming into.
Yeah, what they're after. So, no doubt.
What else we got to talk about here, Brandon?
I could tell you a lot of stories about calling in a quad or 8 on a stand or 6 on a stand and walking away with none of them, unfortunately.
But what'd you learn from that, though? I mean, let me put it this way. When you go back to that same spot that you called in those 8 and walked away with nothing besides empty brass, what'd you learn from that, and what are you going to do different?
Well, I learned that it probably was time to retire the AR-15. I don't know, like, I would probably, when we hunted that stand, there wasn't a lot of wind. There was no wind. And that stand in general was just really interesting because we had that quad come in, and, I mean, we didn't really mag dump, but between Alex and I, we probably dumped 4 or 5 shots at them, and we're both suppressed. And they ran out like 900 yards. They checked up, and they just hung out like where they started. And so we just shut the call off, and we just sat there. And we're like, man, neither one of us are really, we're both still learning. So we're like, we really don't know what to do. And so we just sat there, and then I howled at them, and they howled back. And then there was another group that howled off kind of to our right a little bit, and we just kind of sat there. We sat there, and I think I howled again, and they howled back, but kind of started that barking, kind of, not really booger barking, but they were kind of getting aggressive. And so I was just like, I don't really know what else to do. So I just threw a challenge howl, and that other group that was out there, like, they were all of a sudden in the woods right in front of us, and they just started like going off. And so then I could see kind of one on the edge of the woods, and they just ended up coming in. That was kind of a learning experience right there. It was just like, you're not going to do that on every stand, but we ended up having a second quad come in. And it was just like, okay, I guess just because you miss the first couple you're shooting at doesn't necessarily mean you're done on a stand. Maybe isn't always time to just pack up and leave. And
so you were in between 2 groups.
Yes.
Like, that's a pretty cool scenario to be in right there.
Yeah. And what I would change, if I were to go back and make that stand today, we learned, I drive by that farm all the time on my way to work. But when you go out and you stand in it, like, it's so different when you make your first stand. It's like, okay, those coyotes are coming in, and I guess there's a low spot right there because they dip down to where you can't see them, then they pop back up.
Yeah, surprise, yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, and then by the time they pop back up, they're about right on top of you, and it's time to go. And so if I were, if I could take that stand back and put it on a different day, I would just hunt it with some real wind. I don't know, like I said earlier, I don't know if they got our thermal scent, if it was just kind of just hovering around, or on that stand we're kind of in an open field with not really any like ditches or waterways, or you could get to the timber, but you'd have to walk in pretty far. I'd probably just try to hunt it on a darker night with a better wind, to try to be able to hopefully anticipate where they would come and just let them come in a little closer.
Did you have your newer equipment then?
I had the thermal, I had my scope, did not have the
Did you guys shoot that night?
Before we went out?
No. I mean, when you were talking about, you seen what, 6 or 8?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you guys shoot at all?
By the time we were done, we had both emptied our 10-round mags.
Okay. Well, that's what I was getting at. So, you would feel more confident with what you got now, right?
Oh yeah.
The bolt gun and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Wow.
He goes, yeah.
Listen, I'm not one to judge, but
No, 'cause we were out there that
I would
second-
just wish I could have seen that. That would have been.
Oh, I can show you the videos.
Oh wow! All right, put that on
But,
another episode. No.
Yeah, no, it.
Maybe we'll overlay that.
Yes.
Well, you shoot at those first two, and then they all start to scatter.
4th
So
of
then
July,
you're trying to
baby.
do the running shots, and it's like we both just like after that second group, after we just blew that, we're like, oh crap, I'm out. And he's like, yep, me too.
Well, and that's something I've learned, which I've always run a bolt gun, I guess. But it almost seems like a lot of times, if you shoot once and you miss, if you sometimes just taking that time, racking your gun, a lot of times, they're going to only run out there
Yeah, they'll stop and see what the
75,
hell that
100
was.
yards and stop again. So if you're calling them in to 50, 60 yards, you miss or something happens, or if you have a triple come in, there's 2 of you, we dump 2. A lot of times you don't want to just keep wrapping off that other one, because it's, whoever's running the call, if they're quick on it and they hit some kind of death cry or something, that third one's going to stop, because it's going to hear, Bill always told me, it's like, he says, it's no different than if we're off at a bar somewhere and, we get in a big fight and you hear me screaming while you're, over in the corner, you're going to stop, turn around and come back for your buddy. Generally, that's what they do. So sometimes just, I see some videos and I've seen some guy, like when they're just, we've done it too. I'm not calling anybody out, but when it's just like, oh shit, that is do.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's better off just to make that one shot, slow it down in your head and be like, hey, man, either he's going to stop, or sometimes once they get out there another 75, 100 yards, they'll kind of straighten up and they're not zigzagging. I don't know how many times we've had that 3rd, 4th dog running away and looked at each other and been like, that dog's been shot at before, because you'll watch it. It ain't running a straight line. That thing is just running a bob and weave pattern. It's like, okay.
Well, that was a lot of coyotes. So, hopefully, the good thing about this, if you did have a couple families, maybe one of the families was like, damn, Tommy, they brought guns this time. Shit. You know what I mean? So, no, that's wild.
Yeah, that's what you
But it
had.
was fun. Did you have fun? That's all that matters.
It was fun, but man, when you call an 8
I
on
know,
one stand,
and then
you're like,
afterwards you're like,
you have an empty truck,
are
and
you
you're
kidding me?
how did we not at least have one in the truck after that?
That's mature.
You're on your way, man. You're on your way. You're gonna be, yeah.
Because I know if that was us and we called in a quad, missed, they left, and called in another quad right behind that one and missed, and there was nothing,
I probably wouldn't be sitting here on this podcast right
I
now.
would have. I
I'd be
promise you
knitting.
this much: I wouldn't have a scope and a gun, because that thing would have got wrapped the fuck around a tree, my truck, something. I would have been a
Yeah.
mad son.
You held your composure there.
Oh, dude. Oh,
Yeah.
I admire you
But
for that.
yeah, like you said, experience, and you already had a plan. You got your new equipment. I think it would be a different ball game. I do.
It will be. Well, that video, that first one you killed with your bolt gun, That was the best. I think that was your first one. The video,
Yes.
first video you sent me.
Yeah.
Like I'm watching this video you send me. I see the coyote off. Boom, you shoot and it goes down. The first thing out of your mouth is, "Man, I love this gun." I laughed at that.
I knew that thing was far. I didn't I was ranging it as it was running across the field, and then it just hit the edge of that ditch or that fence line, and it stopped and turned, and I'm like, all right, I just bought this gun. Like, we're gonna see how much ass it really has. And I dropped it. I'm like, and then I ranged it when it was on the ground. I'm like, that says 335, 340 yards. That's like a lot farther than I've been able to shoot with my AR.
Are you running the 90? What ammo you running?
I'm just running the factory 95 grain VMAXs.
So you're running the 95 VMAX. I mean, that's basically what I'm running.
I tried to get a hold of Hayes Ammunition,
That's right. Hey, shout out to Hayes Ammunition.
Yeah.
Taylor Hayes, if you're listening.
tried to get a hold of him, but
No, he's never got me any either.
well, I think
I'm special, boys.
it sounds like
Yes.
all of the stuff's packed away right now because somebody's building a house or something. So
Right.
he said maybe hit him up after the spring or something. But yeah, I'm just running the 95 grain VMAX.
That's what I'm doing the same thing, and I've had no problems. I love it. So
Yeah, I mean that's my bullets are the 95 grain VMAX, the Hornadies. That's what they
It's a little
are.
hotter.
It's just whatever kind of powder and the consistency. That's what I love about it, because it always seems like you buy a box of 20, you can sit down on a bench and wrap all 20 down there, and it always seems like you'll have one or two that is 3 inches outside the group. Now, that's not a huge deal until you have one standing like the other night, dead nuts right in front of you, straight head-on shot. Well, a coyote's chest is 6 inches wide, give or take. And if you're already a little bit right, leaning or something, and if you're shooting 3 inches right, well, you could be completely off.
haircut.
Right.
You know, all I know is it's 18 degrees out with about an 8-mile-an-hour wind.
You ready to go kill some?
I did. I'm
You ready to go kill some, Brandon?
Heck yeah.
All righty. Well, we'll get out of here. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thanks, Brandon, for being on here.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys.
I really appreciate it. Hopefully you'll come back.
I will.
Hey,
Call them till you can't no more.
there you go, everybody. Go shoot straight.